Well, hello and welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and my incredibly special guest, the wonderful Canon Roger J. Hall. How are you, Roger?
Good morning, Andrew. I'm very well indeed, thank you. And I'm sitting in you can perhaps just tell that the sun is just beginning to pour into the chapel, which is a nice spring sign. And actually walking around the tower this morning on the way here, I noticed that some of the trees are showing the very first signs of buds, etc. So yeah, there's a spring in our step and there's a sense we're moving on.
Well, we certainly are moving on, and here in Regent's Park, all the blossoms are out, the cherry blossoms there, the sign of spring. And the great thing about opening up is that you, after having been closed for so long, are going to be opening up for Palm Sunday.
Yeah, we're so excited, really pleased. After 4 months of a very important closure. I mean, it's been very important to do that for all kinds of reasons. We're a small chapel, very small chapel, as you know. The ventilation isn't great in here, and we live within the Tower of London, have to respect the whole of the rest of the Tower of London. But like so many other churches right across the nation, I mean, literally, I know 99% of churches are planning on opening on this coming Sunday, Palm Sunday, as we move through Palm Sunday, Holy Week, and to Easter Sunday. So yeah, we're extraordinarily excited and pleased about it. And you can see behind me, as you've noticed for the last few weeks while we've been doing these, we've been set up for Lent with purple, which is always the liturgical colour for this, with the very big cross that we put on it. And on top of that, by the side of the cross, there are the nails and the dice and the sponge, all symbols of what happened to Jesus on Good Friday, and this sense of that. And in the next week, we will have a little group of people in here. We shall polish and clean the chapel from top to bottom. We have a lady who's very, very excited about coming and doing flowers, our Easter flowers. We will decorate the whole of the altar with our white and gold altar frontal, and put out our vessels and other things that are appropriate for all of Easter. And we'll polish the chairs and clean the brass, and hopefully it'll all be wonderful. So yeah, we're very excited, very, very excited. It's a very small start. It's a very small start and a very small beginning. Sadly, we can't have our wonderful choir. That's probably the thing that people will miss most. We've decided we've got to go cautiously. I'd rather be accused of being cautious than irresponsible. Again, we're a very small chapel, as you know. We have the most wonderful professional choir. And during the autumn period, we just had 4 singers, but we're going to hold back just for a few more weeks. We just want to get into April before we bring the 4 back. And then eventually, we're hoping by June, July time, we may just be beginning to get back to the rest of the choir coming back to join us as well. But it's really important that we're cautious and careful. Just, the churches are just doing, I think, what the government and the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary and others are asking us to do, just to be careful and cautious. None of us want to go into lockdown 4 if we can possibly help it, and I'm sure you'd agree with that, Andrew.
No,
if we can avoid that, we will.
What are you allowed to do? What's allowed to happen in the church?
Well, actually, technically, what churches are allowed is we are allowed to have, we do a risk assessment, and the risk assessment for this chapel made it clear that by putting everybody in every other row, by putting people in every other seat, we can afford, we're a chapel that has 150 seats, we can have approximately 40 people sitting. On top of that, we can have the clergy, the organist, and 4 is what we can have in terms of a choir, because by the distance between, we're putting them on the east wall there, and the congregation is just, we think, sufficient enough to ensure that their projection of their voices as they're singing, because they're all professional singers, wouldn't contaminate anybody within the chapel. We still, right across the nation, they're insisting that we wear masks in church, and when it comes to communion, we only receive in one kind, which means we just receive the bread and not the wine. The Anglican Church of England tradition, of course, is that you normally receive them both, but we are holding back on the wine for now, and we're just giving out the bread, and that's fine. We can live with that. We can live with that, and I'm fairly confident that within 3 or 4 months we'll have moved forward even further.
How do you decide? I mean, lots of people will be wanting to flood back to worship together. How do you decide who the lucky 40 will be?
Depends on how good looking they are. It depends.
I'll be bottom of the list then.
No, I mean, well, I mean, it is that's a really difficult. We've actually interesting you should ask. It's really interesting you should ask that question, because it is a very interesting question. Because on our Zoom meetings with our local clergy, when you're like us, and lots of the churches around here are not much different from us, how do you decide? So what we do is we send out emails advertising the service, and we ask people to put their names down for it. And basically what we do is we take the first 35 people, we leave 5 places off the list for the gate, so that if any of our regular members turn up at the gate on that Sunday, because they have either missed it, we have to remember not absolutely everybody is on email. I mean, you know, the average age of congregations is slightly older than younger. You can't always assume that they're going to read their email. So if we have 1 or 2 turn up at the gate, we want to be able to facilitate them. So, and actually through the autumn period, when we did exactly the same, we never had any problems with that. We had between 30 and 40 people turned up for the 11 o'clock service every Sunday. And we never had the embarrassment of a busload of, you know, of tourists or somebody turning up at the gate saying, we've come to worship on Sunday, which, as you know, has happened in the past quite regularly. Not necessarily a busload, but quite a number of tourists have wanted to come and worship with us. And we haven't had to deal with the business of saying, I'm really sorry, but, you know, we're full. We just can't accommodate you. And I'm sure the cinemas, theatres, concert halls are all going to have the same sort of problem to start with as they open up. You know, they can only take so many. I mean, I shall be first in the queue for James Bond, I can assure you. Right behind you.
Lining up for that.
Right behind you.
Absolutely, always a thrill. So, I mean, it's the most important time in the Christian calendar. Tell me why that is.
Well, the Holy Week, Palm Sunday, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday are traditionally the most important. It's the most important week in the church's calendar. I know most people think probably Christmas is the most important. Actually, it's a very important festival, the birth of Christ at Christmas, and it's a wonderful bringing of families together and all of that. But actually, in terms of the Christian message from birth to death, Easter and the resurrection, which is at the heart of what our Christian faith is all about, and what we celebrate on Easter Sunday, Jesus rising from the dead, Jesus' triumph over the cross, Jesus' triumph over his death, which we sing in all our hymns and we express in what we do in church, is at the very heart of what the Christian message is all about. And that message is all wrapped up in that tiny word of love. Jesus died for us, rose again out of his love for us. It's Jesus' love born on the cross and his resurrection, which is at the very heart of the message of Easter. And when we come together, we celebrate that resurrection, that new life, that new beginning, every time we meet around the altar. And the pivotal moment of that, the bit that springboards it all off, is actually Easter Sunday. And churches across the nation and churches across the world, it's really wonderful. Just do that. Some will, for example, there are some churches where they have a dawn service. As the light rises, they light a bonfire. The idea of light and hope and new beginnings, with an Easter vigil and an Easter start. Now, we haven't gone down that line in the Tower of London. I don't think they'd like a fire set out in the lawn right in the middle of the Tower of London. But I have been part of that sort of expression of it, and great processions to church on Easter Sunday. People will meet in an allocated place. And there's many, actually, some wonderful rural churches in places like Cornwall and Devon, where there have been ancient traditions of people meeting in a certain place, and they all process singing the great Easter hymns, or glory, Lord, and honor. Jesus Christ is risen today. Hallelujah. You know, and they sing these all the way to church. You know,
I like your hallelujah, by the way. How did that work?
I know. And there's also this amazing tradition that the doors are closed and they're thrown open on Easter Sunday. The symbol of the church, and the message is open to everybody. So yeah, it's a time of great celebration, great joy, resurrection and hope. And it is the very heart of what it is that we believe in and that we express for people who live the Christian journey, live out the Christian journey, that at the point of their death and resurrection, they'll be with those that they love, and that Christ will be at the center of their life. It's a wonderful, joyful time.
And you're right about the communities. They all come together. I grew up in a little village called Bracklesham Bay down in West Sussex. And our church was in East Wittering, St Anne's Church. And every year they did the Way of the Cross. And, being tall, I was asked to play Jesus, had the honour of being Jesus every year. And would carry the cross through the village. On that sort of thing. And it's a very emotional moment. We talk about pilgrimages and the thoughts that go on in your head as you take those steps and think about things. Yes, aren't they?
Have you ever been, you'll know about it as well, have you ever taken part or thought of going to the Ober Ammergau for their 10-year, where the whole village lives out that story that you just talked about? And I've met quite a number of people who've been to Ober Ammergau and have come back just exactly like you're saying, just incredibly moved. Here in London now, at Trafalgar Square, every Good Friday, they reenact that whole Good Friday experience. Now, I suspect this year it'll be knocked on the head because of the pandemic and because of social distancing, but it'll be restarted again once we're actually allowed to do it. And interestingly for me, one of the most moving parts of that particular story is many, many years ago, I was chaplain to one of the Army's apprentice colleges, and it was the Engineers Apprentice College at Chepstow, where there will be 1,000 youngsters, 16 to 18, who will be getting every kind of engineering qualification under the sun, from plumbers to draftsmen and all sorts of things. And one year, in the middle year that I was there, I decided that we would do exactly what you was talking about. We try and reenact the Easter story over. Now, all these young lads, all played this part, and it's exactly what you said. So many of them afterwards said, it brought the whole story to life in an incredibly special way. And from the cynics among them, when there were those that, like in Trafalgar Square, when they actually do the crucifixion, there's an absolute stony silence. There's, whether you're a Christian or not, when people are tortured and put to death, it silences you, and it makes you think about, what's going on in the rest of the world today, where there are still people who are tortured, still people who are put to death for things that they believe in, whether it's, Christianity or other faiths, as we're beginning to understand a bit more about what's going on in China. With the Rohingya people there, we don't know the whole story, but we can be suspicious that people are being held for what they believe in, and so anyway, that's all part and parcel of the same story.
Well, the good news is that you are reopening. There is new hope as we enter this extraordinary stage in the Christian calendar. Roger, I look forward to seeing you on the Sunday. I'll make sure we run down and get our tickets now.
You better get in there, sir. You better get in quick.
We'll get in quickly. But as always, Roger, it's an absolute delight. Thank you so much for joining me.
Very happy Easter to you as well, Andrew, and to all your family. And don't eat all the Easter eggs at once.
Oh, too late for that.
Bye, Andrew. Thank you. God bless. Bye. Yeah, fine. That's okay. I can see you.
Just before you go, I did discover, I was talking to you earlier about when we did the Way of the Cross, and all those years ago, I was just a teenager, so you can tell how many years ago it was. We actually made, this is what I remember, we made the Crown of Thorns. So this is
Crown of Thorns.
You can guess how old I was at the time, but this I used to wear and carry across rounds Bracklesham all those many years ago. So this will be over 40 years old. I'm not doing that sort of stuff. But again, I know I look so much younger, don't I? But it is, as you say, it brings it back to you, having gone through those sort of steps. And anybody who witnesses those things now, whether you're watching this on television or remote, thinking about reflecting on those sort of moments. As I say, this to me was the sort of symbol which I've kept all the years. Because my own little personal memory of that sort of time.
Sure.
But,
those Good Friday processions, which go on all over the country and all over the world, are really powerful. And some of them, some of them are really big, and actually even the very small ones in villages where just a dozen people, will carry a cross round through the village, and put it on in a special place, and then, just stop, pause, say a prayer. The real arch, what I call the real archers bit, with Alan from the vicar from the Archers, just doing their little bit are just as significant. People, it's just like you, never forget that. I mean, I know, I didn't say it, but I bumped into former engineers from the army who've reappeared years and years later, and said to me, you know, one of the things they remember from their 2 years they did at the college there were some of these things like that, where you actually get people physically up to do things, and it sort of challenges them intellectually, spiritually, but leaves them thinking. I mean, that's what it's all about to some degree, isn't it? You're left thinking about it, and you know what it might mean for you and what it might mean in a wider sense.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Roger, thank you very much for being our guest. Thank you again for joining us.
Good to be with you. Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye. So thank you again to my very special guest, Canon Roger J. Hall, MBE, who is there at the Tower of London. Whatever you're doing in the lead up to Easter, I hope you celebrate in style. We are New Hope, looking out into spring as we go into summer, and so on and so forth. Whatever you're doing, if you'd like to comment on today's show, or like to be a guest, or have suggestion for guests, you can write to me at guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com. Don't forget, you can follow me at Andrew Eborn at Octopus TV, and you can subscribe on all of the usual channels. But for me, for now, thank you very much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.